Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Wind Waker Unflooded. I am your host, Joe Kendrick, and this is a 3D modeling fan art project where we are bringing to life the kingdom of Hyrule within the world and art style of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Of course, you know, if you played The Wind Waker, you know that all the islands of the Great Sea that you see in that game are just the mountaintops of the world of Hyrule, but we never really get to explore Hyrule. All we see is a small portion of it near the castle. And so this art project is all about bringing the full world to life as you've never seen it before. This is Wind Waker Unflooded. So we're just getting more into the specifics of the world today, kind of working on, it's not necessarily a specific location, but just kind of the area around Spectacle Rock and fleshing it out and working on the railroad that's going to pass around there, because that was already kind of laid down on my map. And just trying to figure out some things around, like, all right, I want there to also be a pedestrian crossing kind of around that. So there's going to be an intersection, right, between where I want travelers to go and where the train can go. How do we handle that? Does there need to be a tunnel, a bridge, what? And so this video is just all about figuring out those details, and this is all just a part of the industrialization of this version of Hyrule, which I think is cool. I think it's cool to, I know that, I don't know, I was watching some of my videos from a month ago, or revisiting comments from them, and it was interesting to just kind of remember how much of a discussion there was around, do we even want trains in the world? And it was controversial then, and now I think there's still people watching videos that are like, oh, are there trains? People that maybe haven't watched in a second, they're like, wait, I see train tracks. And so I think it's cool to, we've made that decision, and it's always just kind of cool to reflect on the channel and realize that, together, we've come a long way and made a lot of creative decisions together, and this world is getting more and more complete as we move along. And that's really exciting to me, because I guess there are times where this is such a big project, and in each video, I may only get a little bit done. And I mean only a little bit. I feel like it's less than a percentage of work that I do on average per video. I think that that's true. I think that's absolutely true. And so sometimes it hits me that oh, there's so much more to do, but then I can look back at progress, look back at comments, old discussions that we were having on the channel about creative directions, things we want to do with the world. And it's clear that, we have come a long way. We've figured things out. We've come to consensi about things, plural of consensus. Comment down below what the plural of consensus is. And it's just inspiring that we have figured out a lot. And I thank you to everyone who has left comments to kind of help, let me know y'all's stances are on these things. Because, that's how I know, it's up to y'all's comments whether I know if something is controversial within, for my audience, within the community. And I want to know, for all these Zelda fans out there, if my version of Hyrule, is there something that seems off to y'all? I want y'all to let me know. And just through all of those discussions, it's just nice to know that, we can all communicate and figure things out together. And sometimes that means going in new directions, and that's exciting. It's just after a long time, there's just so much that we'll figure out together. And I guess I thank y'all for being along for the ride. I don't know. I feel like I'm just kind of rambling, but all this to say is, y'all, thank you for your comments. They directly inform what I work on next. And I always invite y'all to comment if y'all have any feedback, positive or negative. I want to know if I'm living up to expectations or just what your ideas are. Not just feedback, but I want to know y'all's ideas, new locations you want to see for the project, not just pulled from other games, but things that you think make sense for the world, ways to continue to add detail and things that will help flesh out this version of Hyrule, this prosperous land that is about to fall. And there's a story there. And so any way that we can help tell that story. And I think train tracks are a part of that story. Even though that was controversial for a while, figuring out, well, trains have never been in Zelda except for Spirit Tracks, which didn't actually take place in the mainland version of Hyrule. So how are we going to do trains here? One, it's just because they still make sense with the story. Even if we haven't seen them in, authentic, or what am I trying to say? The authentic Hyrule before, it still makes sense for the story to show this prosperous land that is industrialized, that has this level of technology, that still helps tell the story of this great kingdom that is about to fall. But anyway, I think it's time for a short message, so I will talk to all of you again after the break. See you then.
If you want to be able to support me as a creator, there's several ways that you can do that. Become a member on Patreon. It gives you access to exclusive bonus features and early access content in all of my filmmaking projects. Stuff like early access to scripts that I'm writing, storyboards, previs, rough cuts, and music that I compose. I'm a composer, and any music that you've heard in the background of this video was my music. So go to Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music and type in Joe Kendrick. That's JoeKendrick. Look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify.
And we're back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. We are still working on the area around Spectacle Island, now Spectacle Rock / Spectacle Mountain. These kind of dual peaks, and there's a railroad that kind of passes by that area, and figuring out the pedestrian crossing there. I really like the bridge that I've been working on for that area, and I think it turned out really well. And it's simple, and that's something that I've really been trying to master with this project, is this kind of, it's Wind Waker. Maybe I've said this before, but like I didn't necessarily think of it as being super low poly, but like over the course of this map, and especially as I've continued to add new locations, trying to keep things as low poly as possible has been a really important part of this project, just for saving my own computer's life, but also just to continue to be productive, right? And a low poly art style allows me to make more in this world quickly. And I can add details after that, but just something I was figuring out with this bridge was just trying to figure out, like, well, without a whole lot of polygons, how can I get the feeling that I want to convey? Have just enough detail, but also, kind of leave a lot of detail to be shown through textures or just through, even just like the transparent texture on the railing, right? Which is a single plane, and yet that has to communicate an entire intricate railing. And that's a trick that I'm sure Breath of the Wild does as well, but I've noticed specifically that even Skyward Sword does that trick, right? Of this, like, these railings that are just flat planes with like an alpha texture on them, and that's it. I don't know for sure whether Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom use that trick as well, but I know that Skyward Sword does as well, just as a cost-saving measure. But as well, also, I just kind of want to bring up in this video, I also am doing some work just on continuing to figure out the shape of Spectacle Island, Spectacle Rock, Spectacle Mountain, whatever you want to call it, figuring out just the overall shape and the path, and how are you going to get up, from the path where the bridge is and the railroad is, how are you going to get up to the top of the mountain, and just continue to figure out the shape of the mountain. And as I've done with some other locations, I've just kind of been very freeform with that process, and just kind of trusting my gut, and just kind of feeling more like a painter or a sculptor. And it's less about preparedness and more just about, okay, I'm just going to put something on the page and we're going to see where that takes me. And I don't know, like, I know painters who are actually very specific and intentional about their outlining process. I'm sure there are sculptors that are actually similar, but to me, it feels like that kind of process where it feels more leisurely and it's less precise and measured. And it's more, sometimes I 3D model and I'm trying to be very precise and driven based on pre-production and concepts, and very intentional about the shapes that I use. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I just kind of want to carve out a little bit of the world today, add some geometry here, kind of see the shape that it creates kind of on its own. And it's never really on its own. I say on its own, but it's always guided by my artistic hand. It's always guided by, like, I'm still placing all the vertices, right? Like, I'm still the one creating that model, whatever it is, but it's less intentional, and it's more just, I'm going to just kind of see where it goes and where my inspiration takes me throughout the process, and that is a different process, and it feels like it's being made on its own, even though it isn't, right? And I guess, like, I think for everyone that is an artist, what I'm talking about, that feeling. I think especially with writers, I feel this all the time when I'm working on scripts, right? For those that don't know, I have a filmmaking background, especially in indie film. I love making little short films. That's one of my passions as well. And with scripts, often I'm very intentional about my outlines, and I'm going scene by scene, figuring out specifically within each location, what do I want to show? What shots do I want to use? And sometimes I'll write a script or an outline, and I'm just so intentional about, here's how I want to spend every minute. But I often find that I can't do that for the final draft. I have to do that to prepare for a script. I have to be super intentional about what I want to show and I have to make outlines like that. But usually for a final draft, the way that like I get something that I'm happy with is like I've made my outlines, I've been intentional, I've made my pre-production, and then I kind of set that aside and I start writing, and I don't look at the outline. Maybe I do, but it's mainly just like I'm not going to worry about what I've prepared. Mainly I've prepared so that I have it in my heart, in my mind. I've answered questions within myself about what do I want to say? What do I have to say? What story do I want to tell? How do I want to tell it? And now that I know the answers to those questions, I'm not going to reference the outline anymore. I'm going to just basically freehand and make my script. And it kind of feels like the script is writing itself at that point. I'm not referencing anything. I'm just putting my pen to page. Not literally, I'm typing. And then just from that, if I can just kind of get into a flow state and just write and write and write, it feels like it's writing on its own. Like the script, it feels like I didn't even write it. Just because that is, especially when I'm just inspired and I'm writing so quickly, it's like I'm not worried or thinking about the process of going line to line. I'm just thinking about, oh, I have this story to tell. How do I want to tell it? And that is just being spat onto the page. And that doesn't always mean that it's great writing or that it's perfect and that I figured everything out. I want to make sure that y'all know that I do feel humble about that. Like, I'm very aware that there's things that I miss sometimes in a splatter draft like that. But usually after a draft like that, that's when I finally feel like, oh, because I was in touch with the inspiration and that's what was guiding the draft, I'm finally happy with it. When drafts that were guided by excessive outlining and pre-production don't necessarily always feel like they're in touch with the inspiration. But anyway, I think that's enough rambling about that. Y'all, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to support me as a creator. I've already told you how you can support me. All of those ways are super important and meaningful for me. I don't make any ad revenue on these videos. If you saw an ad on the video, it's because YouTube might be putting an ad on the video, and I don't think that's right. But, because for me, Wind Waker Unflooded is completely not monetized. I don't make any ad revenue from this channel. So if you want to be able to support me by becoming a Patreon member, donating through Ko-fi, or listening to my music on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music, all those methods are super meaningful, and I appreciate everyone that has supported me so far. So with that all out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. But for now, I'll let you go.